everybody. Welcome back to Touching Grass Podcast. I forgot about it last week because I was home for some reason. Oh, I was home because my brother was in town, and then it was the weekend, so I didn't have time to do the podcast. But it was honestly okay because it was just after the Bruins game, and the other Bruins game was, the second Bruins game was on Saturday. So as you can see on the screen, the Bruins are right now 2-0, which I get. I get it that I get it's the beginning of the season, but I mean a 2-0 start is very good. And as you can see, the upcoming opponents are the Sharks, the Kings, the Ducks, the Blackhawks, the Ducks again, the Red Wings. They could go on a little bit of a streak here. I get the Red Wings and probably the Kings might be a challenging team, but I know the Blackhawks and the Ducks and the Sharks will probably not. But even if they are, then those are just potential teams to look at for trade candidates, because I know all three of those teams will want to try and build up for the future. Especially the Sharks and the Blackhawks, because the Blackhawks obviously just got Connor Bedard last year. Not even last year. Literally this last draft, which was like a week ago, month ago. But anyways, so right now for the scoring leaders for Boston, it's Pastrnak, obviously, but surprisingly enough, it's JVR at number 2. Which I really like JVR. I really like his game. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's just a depth signing," but I don't. I mean, yeah, it was at the time, but now he's kind of turned into this player that he always was. He was on the Philadelphia Flyers before. He was never going to be the great player that he once was when he was on the Leafs. But now he's kind of turning into that player. And again, I get it's only been 2 games, but what we're seeing out of him so far is actually very good. It's very good to see that. Yeah, it's only a smaller contract, but it's not a waste of a contract. Like, it's not a waste of a roster spot. But it has only been 2 games, so we will see. And then surprisingly enough, who's high on this list is Milan Lucic. He hasn't had a goal yet for Boston this year, but he has been a part of key plays, key setup plays, and him and Beecher, and I forget who the other line mate is, has been playing very well together. And I thought Beecher was going to be another Milan Lucic, and now he gets to get advice from the man himself. Even if Lucic is not the man he once was, I doubt he will be, but you never know. Look at JVR. JVR is actually passionate about being on Boston, and he's showing that. Lucic is passionate about being back into Boston, and he's showing that. All of these young players are now seeing that passion because they're seeing it firsthand. They're not seeing it off of their screen while playing for the AHL team. They're not seeing it from the bench. They're actually seeing it on ice. Beecher and Portis, I know that's not how you say his last name, but that's how I originally said it. Portis, again, doesn't have any goals, but him and Frederick, I believe, there's another guy that's been playing good with Portis, but Portis has been blowing everybody out of the water. Nobody really expected him to play this good. I get it has only been 2 games and he doesn't have a goal yet, but he's been a very positive player right now. He's constantly in the play. He's constantly trying to get the puck, but he's not trying to get it for a selfish reason. He's trying to get it to set up the play. And I personally think this may be a hot take, but I personally think that Matthew Portis is going to be another David Krejci, where he's not always going to go for the goal. He's not always going to go for the flashy whatever. You have guys like Pastrnak and JVR and Brad Marchand to do that. We don't need another one of those players. And David Krejci was more than happy enough to set up the play, pass the puck, and let a one-timer go off by Bergeron or Marchand or McQuaid, and I really think having those setup guys is going to be very good for Carlo and Shattenkirk and Lindholm, all of the guys that really haven't made a bigger name for themselves. They are a big name in Boston, but like they're not. I get the defensemen, but you gotta get in the play. You gotta be ready there. And I don't really see that out of those guys. I loved when we got them. I love Brandon Carlo. I would never give him up in the world because he's a 6'4", 200 whatever guy, and he's huge, just like Lucic, just like Lindholm. The only small defenseman we have is Grzelcyk, but Grzelcyk is turning himself into a Torey Krug. I'm not saying he is a Torey Krug, but he's turning himself into a Torey Krug type of player, where we have the George of the Jungle types. Now we just need a Jane, and that's a reference from the movie Draft Day. Very good movie too. But another player that is showing surprisingly good effort is Charlie Coyle. Just last night, I didn't look at every single face-off, but I was watching not last night. Yeah, last night, Saturday. I didn't look at every single face-off, but all of the key face-offs he was winning. I get every single face-off is a key face-off, but when it mattered most and when we needed a win, he would get the win. So he knows how to be a situational player, and that's been very helpful for the Bruins right now. Nobody really has, like, even Beecher right here. Yeah, it shows a -1, and for Lauko it's showing a -3. But we're 2 games in, and I personally have seen a lot of growth from them. Like, Lauko has been amazing. So has Morgan Geekie, and he is a +2 right now. This is all subjective based. It's only 2 games. But if we can go on a little stretch, like a 6-game stretch right here until the end of October, I think that's going to really boost the morale of all of these players. Because right now, nobody's really that bad. Like, yeah, some players have a -2, like Lucic has a -2, but he's also been on the ice to stop several goals, and they're 2-0. He can be a -2 all day long if that means the Bruins will be 2-0. I'm completely happy with that. But if we look at the upcoming Bruins games, there's a big game right there, November 2nd. Actually, that's sooner than I thought. Oops, sorry about that. Didn't mean to click that. Yeah, and then we start getting into harder opponents of the Panthers and the Leafs. And so that's going to be a big challenge right there, because these two, well, this game is a divisional game. This game is a rival game. Regardless of the outcome, I really hope the lineups don't change that much. We're actually going to look up what the current lineups are just to jog a memory of who's playing with who. First line is obviously Pasternak and Zacha, but JVR has actually swapped positions with Brad Marchand. They have Brad Marchand in the second line, which I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing for Brad Marchand, because he's a first-line playmaker, but JVR has been playing amazing, and if that means JVR is playing just as good, why wouldn't we drop Brad Marchand to the second line and then have him play with Jake DeBrusk, who's been lighting it up for a couple of years now because they put him on the first line? But it is interesting now looking at it again. I could have sworn they swapped these lineups. I think they did. Now looking at this again, I think they did actually swap these lineups. I think Brad Marchand was on the first line with Jake DeBrusk and Coyle, because Pasternak plays way better on the second line. But if this line can work as a great first line, awesome, because they obviously all three play well together. And if the first line can play well and the second line can play well together, then they can easily swap back and forth, and that'll confuse so many teams, because then they're going to have to change up their strategy to play Boston. And then the third line is kind of the big body guys. Morgan Geekie is 6 foot. Matthew Portis, I believe, is 6 foot. Morgan Geekie may even be 6'2". Trent Frederick is 6'2", I think. So the third line is the crusher line. The fourth line is surprisingly, yes, big body people like Lucic 6'4", Beecher 6'4", Lauko I think 6. But right now, this has kind of been the setup line, which has been doing wonders so far. Like, the league has talked about how the fourth line has been the best line for Boston, and I think that's why they're 2-0 right now, because Lucic is now back in Boston. He's passionate about playing. He may not be the same as he once was, but they never needed him to. Yeah, he was the goal scorer back then, but he wasn't on the score sheet constantly. He was just a presence. He was a presence as a big body presence, and a setup guy, and somebody to take the puck and set the play up on the other end of the ice. And then him pairing with Beecher is, I like I said before, I think going to be another Milan Lucic. And this is his time to show that he can be that type of player, because when Lucic originally played for Boston, he was playing with Daniel Palais and I forget the other name, probably Andrew Ference, I think. And all three of those guys were very similar in stature. But the same thing with Lauko that I'm noticing and Morgan Geekie is they're kind of on the smaller end, not like just averagely small for hockey, but they have the passion to play as a bigger guy. And that's what Boston needs right now. The defense hasn't changed. Matt Grzelcyk is remaining on the first line, so they obviously see what they like about him, or they like what they see about him. I like him. Don't get me wrong, I really like Matthew Grzelcyk. He has been playing great, but I personally think they should drop him. I don't know where, because Forbett and Shattenkirk play well, and Lindholm and Carlo play well, and Carlo can't play on the first line because he's just not a first line guy, and you're not going to put Lindholm and McAvoy together, because then you're just putting two good players on one line, and it won't make a lot of sense. So, I don't know. Maybe they'll keep him and use him as trade bait. Maybe that's what they want to do. Maybe they want to see what type of defensemen are out there available for trade. If they do trade him, I would like for them to trade for a similar player and not just another depth player and put Carlo on the first line and put Lindholm on the first line. I would like it to be somebody who is just as good. And Derek Forbett, I've heard his name in the trade rumor, and he keeps going back and forth from being a good player and a bad player, and that's not the consistency that the Bruins need. But right now, it's only 2 games. Let's see if he can improve his game. I personally think he can, because now he has another year on his belt of being a Boston Bruin. He will hopefully have a full and healthy year to prove himself, at least until the deadline. But I think his leash and Matthew Grzelcyk's leash will get shorter and shorter every 10 games. And I think around game 30 or 40, something like that, sorry about that, is the deadline. I forget what exactly it is, but just the leash is getting shorter and shorter. Shattenkirk, if he doesn't do good, he was a depth guy, but right now he's doing way better than people assumed. Brandon Carlo, they're not going to get rid of him only because of his height. If he was Grzelcyk's size, they would have instantly gotten rid of him. But because Brandon Carlo is 6'4" and he has that reach, he's just that presence of a guy. And I'm not comparing him to Chara, but Chara wasn't that good of a goal scorer. They just kept him because he was 6'9". But also Chara was a very incredible person. He was a leader. He was the team captain for all of those years. He glued the team together. Now, obviously, to speak of the team captain, obviously it's Brad Marchand, and obviously he was going to get it, at least for 1 year. But he what I'm actually noticing is he has matured a little, but I mean, Brad Marchand being Brad Marchand is kind of how the team plays and how the team understands Brad Marchand's game style. Why would he change that just because he's the captain? Does that mean he has to mature? Yes. Does that mean he has to stop being Brad Marchand? Probably in certain scenarios. But honestly, him being Brad Marchand is why the Bruins are good. He's very good at getting under the skin of every single player, even ex-teammates, even current teammates who understand his past. So I say just bring it on. Bring on more Brad Marchand. And he's only probably going to have the captaincy for a year or two anyways. So what's the issue? Unless he starts getting a bunch of dumb penalties, then teammates will be like, well, why is that our captain? But a lot of these guys, besides Beecher and Portis and Geeky, know that that's how Brad Marchand plays, and they know that. Well, let's rally around that. Let's rally around his like connivingness. Let's back him up. Like, he's our captain now. So maybe him being Brad Marchand will actually help the team even more. But I think the next captain will probably it's a toss up, honestly, between David Pastrnak and McAvoy. McAvoy has been an incredible player, an unstoppable defenseman, a top defenseman for years, and will be a top defenseman for years to come. But David Pastrnak has just lit it up. But I personally think it's probably going to go to McAvoy, just because the last defenseman they had as a captain worked out incredibly. So I think the next captaincy is going to go to McAvoy. But I also don't assume that Pastrnak would be butthurt about that. He would completely understand. And if he really was and got all mad about not getting captaincy, well, then maybe it'd be time to trade him, because Boston doesn't want those type of players. But he's never complained once about anything of the sorts. But oh yeah, and then for the power play, it's pretty much kind of what we all assume. But on the second power play unit, we actually have Matthew Portis and Geeky and Shattenkirk, which is a very interesting power play, because Shattenkirk is a big body, but he is more known to be an offensive player. And Portis, again, is the setup guy. And I think that's going to work extremely well for the power play. It's not the penalty kill, it's the power play. Now, when we look at the first penalty kill, we actually have Derek Forbort and Brandon Carlo and Charlie Coyle, three big bodies on the penalty kill. And then we have Brad Marchand. You're thinking, oh, of course they're going to put one of the best players on the penalty kill. But why Brad Marchand? Why? Because he, like I said before, he's the guy who knows how to get under your skin and knows how to disrupt you, and knows how to just disrupt the play and kill time on your own power play. He knows how to waste your own time on your own power play, even with one less guy. And then the second power play unit is actually more skilled guys. We have Zacha and DeBrusk, and then Lindholm and McAvoy. And both of those defensemen are fantastic defensemen, because it's the second power play, it's the second penalty kill, and they don't really get a lot of playing time together, because you don't usually put your best defenseman with your other best defenseman. But it's the penalty kill, so why not just try that? It's game 2, so you never know what's going to be changed and what's going to stay. But we still have Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. And Swayman did incredible in his season debut on Saturday. My brain instantly forgot what I was going to say. But I'm very glad that we have still. I'm very glad that both players are still on this team, because most fans keep saying, "Oh, we should trade one or the other and then have the other be the certified starter." Okay, so regardless of which one, they're both dynamite. Let's say we keep Allmark and trade Swayman. What if Allmark gets injured? What if he gets cold? Is there anybody who's just as good as Swayman, or vice versa, anybody who's just as good as Allmark to be just as good? Like, and the answer is no. Like, most goalies are getting paid what they're getting paid. Swayman just had admiration, and he's getting paid around, I don't know, 3 or 4 million, something like that, maybe even more. Most good goalies are getting paid that. Like, go look at Tampa's goalie. Go look at like Toronto, even Toronto's goalie Samsonov, who's not even that big of a name, is getting paid. He's getting paid good. Like, he's getting paid very well just to be like probably a B goalie. I mean, he is a good young goalie, but like, obviously he's not that big of a name for me to really talk about him that much. But there's nobody that is better than either one of these players, and I think we should keep both of these players. But the good thing about having so much depth on this team is that if Grzelcyk goes out, or just goes cold, or they trade him, they can easily put one of these two guys on the first line, and all they have to do is just move up Derek Forbort or Kevin Shattenkirk, and then just trade for or sign a third defenseman, or better yet, a guy that I haven't even talked about yet. I think his first name is Matt Lohrei, and he is basically another Brandon Carlo, but better skilled wise. He's the same height as Brandon Carlo, but an incredible player. And the only reason that they didn't bring him up is because they wanted to see what Shattenkirk would do. I personally would have probably brought him up and then put Shattenkirk on the bench, but they wanted to see how Shattenkirk did, and they don't want to upset the veteran. They're not upsetting Lohrei. They're gonna throw him into the AHL just to see how his game continues to improve. But they would rather have a veteran defenseman on the third line. And if he doesn't do good and Lohrei starts doing better, well, then put Lohrei in, and then swap Shattenkirk. But they can keep putting one good player in with another good player. But the nice thing, again, about having this depth that I said before was, I think if they were going to trade anybody, a good trade asset is Grzelcyk, a good trade asset is Trent Frederic, Morgan Geekie, Jacob Lauko maybe even Charlie Coyle if there's a first line or second line center that opens itself up to us. But right now we're 2-0. Like there's not much changes that need to be done, and people can say, "Oh, it's an ugly win." Well, it's still a win. Like, a win is a win. Doesn't matter how you rephrase the word. Doesn't matter how you twist it. It still says a win. But I said this last year, and I'm going to say it again. I think this season is going to be special. And by history, if history repeats itself, and I hopefully believe it will, all of the teams that win the President's Trophy and then get swept or whatever way too early in the playoffs, the next year they win the Stanley Cup. So I personally think this team, I know it's early to say, but I personally think this team could go deep into the playoffs. And everybody probably said that last year after they got the record of most wins. But everybody said that about Tampa when they won it, and then they got swept by Columbus of all teams in the first round. And now look at Columbus. They're a bumbling, falling apart team. And then look at Tampa. They're still a top contending team, now with 2 to 3 Stanley Cups. Boston, it's their time to be in that category. The last cup was in 2011, which is not that far. It's only 12 years or 13 years, I think. My math could be wrong. But I mean, that's still a long time. That's basically like a couple guys NHL careers. But they kind of basically have the same team. Well, not really. Again, my brain was thinking of 2019. But look at that. They went from winning a Stanley Cup in 2011 to then going back to the finals in 2013, to then going back into the finals in 2019, and then in 2021 or something like that, whenever the COVID year happened, they started out booming, and then in 2022 they won the record for most regular wins. And I get the regular season means nothing, but the team is still a contender. The team is still a top team, and they've kept themselves competitive even since winning the Stanley Cup almost 13 years ago. Most of the players from that team are gone. Lucic is actually the only player who's back from that team. So he has the mentality of winning. He understands what the playoffs are the time to be. Oh, sorry, and Marchand. I'm so used to seeing Marchand here. Marchand was also on that team. So both of these guys can now talk and tell stories and inspire this team to go deeper into the playoffs, to continue being that competitive team, to continue just being the big bad Bruins that every single player and every single fan knows them to be, and knows that they want to be the big bad Bruins as well. And I think they will get back to being the big bad Bruins. So we'll see how the season goes. The Boston Bruins are 2-0. Everybody has been playing great. Pastrnak is right now, he has 4 points in 2 games, which is incredible. JVR is playing good. Brad McAvoy. Brad Marchand is playing good. Charlie McAvoy is obviously doing incredible. And all of the depth guys, all of the young guys, all of the guys that people have already written off are doing good. Even Lucic, like I said before, is a -2. But that's really not that bad. Like, it's only been 2 games, and it's not like he's purposely coughed up a goal. He's not a spring chicken anymore, but he was never a fast guy. Neither was Krejci, and Krejci was the setup guy. But for now, I think I'm going to end it there, and I'll pick it up next week, and hopefully have a special guest or maybe some news will break. We'll see what happens. But right now, I think the Bruins are a top team. I get it's only been 2 games. The only time that people can really say this team is a good top team is like a month into it. But it's always nice to start the season at 2-0. So, I'll see you guys next week. Stay awesome, you're awesome, and rock on. Peace.